The devastating warnings of death, haunting paranormal stories you'll never forget. The clock struck midnight, the witching hour, when shadows danced like phantoms across the walls of a long, forgotten house. Each creak of the old wooden floorboards echoed like a sinister whisper, telling tales of those lost within its dark embrace. But what lay beneath the surface of this forgotten relic was something far more terrifying. There, in the cold silence, lingered the souls of the damned. In the small town of Elmswood, strange things were happening. People spoke in hushed tones about the chilling figure seen at the edge of town, a woman dressed in tattered white, her hair hanging like thin vines of sorrow. She was said to appear at midnight, eyes glowing like coals in a fire, beckoning those brave enough to follow. But those who did, never returned. Local legend spun tales of a cursed tree at the edge of the woods. A twisted silhouette that, on stormy nights, bled with a dark crimson sap. No one dared approach it, yet children swore they heard whispers calling their names, luring them closer. One night, under a pale moon, a group of thrill-seeking teens snuck out, hearts pounding with adrenaline. They dared each other to touch the cursed tree. As they approached, a blood-curdling howl broke through the silence, freezing their senses. Was it the wind or something far more sinister? The branches reached out like skeletal fingers, waiting to ensnare them in a vice of despair. Just when they thought to retreat, one of them stumbled, falling to the ground, gasping, as if something unseen had clutched her throat. The group scattered, panic painting their faces as they fled. But deep down, they knew the real horror awaited back home. The older generation had warned them about the woman in white and the tree's curse. They were not mere stories, but echoes of truth woven into the fabric of their lives. A truth that they were now all too aware of, one that threaded them into a fabric of fear that would never fray. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. They returned, breathless, hearts racing. The cursed tree loomed behind them, casting a long shadow, as if it had witnessed every terror they faced. But something more unnerving rested at their doorstep when they arrived. A single white flower laid upon the threshold, glistening with dew as if it had been waiting just for them. It was an omen, a warning. The question hung in the air like fog: who or what had left it there? And as midnight approached once more, the thrill of horror twisted into stark dread. Would they be the next victims of the haunting secrets that bound Elmswood, or could they uncover the dark truth before it consumed them? The morning sun begrudgingly lifted above the horizon, bathing Elmswood in an eerie glow. Despite the light, a heavy darkness clung to the hearts of the teens. Each of them sensed the weight of the previous night's encounter, like a shroud wrapping tightly around their thoughts. They exchanged glances, reading the terror etched on each other's faces. The girl who had fallen, Lydia, seemed particularly fractured, as if the air still clung to her throat, choking her with every breath. They gathered on the porch before school, the white flower still hauntingly bright against the dark wood. James, the most eager of the group, reached to touch it, but a violent shiver shot through him as though the essence of danger pulsed from the flower, daring him to unravel its mystery. What if it's a warning? Lydia's voice quivered, breaking the tense silence. What if it means we're in danger? Come on, it's just a flower, James laughed nervously. It doesn't mean anything. But deep down, they all knew it did. As they walked to school, whispers and furtive glances from townsfolk felt conspicuously sharper. An elderly woman clutched her rosary tighter as they passed, muttering under her breath about the curse that plagued Elmswood. The air crackled with unspoken fear, and the familiar path felt haunted, each tree and shadow making them second-guess their thoughts. Lunchtime offered little comfort. They huddled together in a corner of the cafeteria, sharing glances filled with dread. The atmosphere buzzed with the usual chatter, but it faded to a drone as unsettling memories rushed back. "Do you think the woman in white will come for us?" Marina, the quietest of them, asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Stop it. You're scaring me," Lydia replied, eyes wide, her pulse racing. They fell silent, the threat of that spectral figure looming like a dark cloud threatening a storm. After school, the group decided to swing by the edge of the woods, a dangerous detour. The cursed tree beckoned like a siren-esque call, each inch toward it leaving them caught between fear and intrigue. Old branches twisted together, sheltering a deep, dark silence that felt alive. Suddenly, a flash of white darted between the trees. The group froze. It was her, the woman in white. Hair flying wildly in the wind, she beckoned with long fingers, her hollow eyes boring into theirs. It was an invitation wrapped in dread. "Run!" James yelled, urgency exploding from him as if he'd released a wild animal. They turned, sprinting, their hearts thumping against their ribcages like an impending doom, but as they fled, Lydia tripped, tumbling to the ground with a sharp gasp. The ground under her felt different, emotions churning like storm clouds. As she looked up, there stood the woman, closer than ever, her presence drenched in sorrow and longing. "You came to me," she whispered, voice like thin smoke. Lydia felt something cold grip her wrist. Panic surged, and the others turned back, horror spreading across their faces. Their friend was trapped, but wasn't she also the one they needed to save? With a raw scream, Lydia's voice pierced the air. "Help me!" Suddenly, the woman vanished into thin air, leaving only a cold wind swirling around them. Breathless, they rushed to Lydia's side. "What just happened?" Marina's voice quaked. A fog wrapped around them, heavy and thick. Before they could even catch their breath, a chilling realization hit them like a punch to the gut. This was only the beginning. Part of the curse lay buried deep within each of them, and whatever force had entwined them with Elmswood's dark history wasn't finished yet. The truth was lurking in the shadows, ready to strike. But who among them would be brave enough to face it? The sun dipped lower, turning the sky a bruised purple. Elmswood was alive and yet suffocated by something unseen. The chill in the air weighed heavily on the teens, reminding them that darkness wasn't just creeping in, it had already settled, nesting in their hearts. James knelt near Lydia, her face pale and drawn, the terror of their encounter still racing through them. What was that?" he stammered, every fiber of his being urging him to dismiss what they'd seen as a figment of their collective imagination. Lydia blinked rapidly, her mind racing. The cold sensation from the woman lingered, twisting tightly around her thoughts. I don't know. But I felt her. It was like she knew me. Or maybe she wanted you," Marina whispered, the accusation hanging heavy in the air. There was an edge of fear in her voice, mingling with guilt. "Shut up. You're not helping." James snapped, rising to his feet. The fight-or-flight adrenaline coursed through him. They had to go. The woods had offered them nothing but terror. But curiosity dragged at them like a chain. A part of each teen ached to understand what they had stumbled into. What history had intertwined their fates with this damned place? "I think we should go back. Find out what it is," Lydia said, surprising herself with her boldness. "What if there are clues? Maybe we can reverse whatever this is." Her heart felt raw, trembling between the urge to flee and the need for truth. "Yeah, let us dig deeper into the fear," James sneered, voice dripping with sarcasm. "That sounds safe. Guys. We can't just walk away. We saw her. She chose Lydia." Marina insisted, desperation clawing at her voice as her wide eyes searched theirs. "Choose. Or trap." James countered, dark dread pooling in his gut. Still, as he glanced back toward the woods, he wondered if he would regret not exploring further. The air thickened, daylight fading fast, and they stood on the precipice of decision. The whisper of branches swayed with stories etched in shadows, and sawdust memories floated like ghosts in the breeze. Suddenly, a wail pierced through the silence, a sound that clawed at the very core of their sanity. It was as if the woods themselves were crying out in agony. Each teen froze, their hearts racing, pounding an unsteady drumbeat against their chests. "What was that?" Lydia whispered, voice shaking. "I don't know," James replied, glancing nervously around. "But it sounded like someone in pain. Maybe someone needs help." Marina moved toward the tree-line without hesitation, driven by an impulse she couldn't explain. "Marina, wait!" Lydia shouted, lunging forward, but this time her legs felt heavy, anchored by the gravity of impending doom. They couldn't let fear bind them, urgency propelled them. In an act of solidarity, they followed Marina into the dark embrace of the woods, plunging deeper into the unknown. The sounds echoed and twisted around them, and every step felt like a step toward ruin. Frantic thoughts raced through Lydia's mind. She could feel shadows creeping closer, their icy fingers almost brushing against her. Was the woman in white still watching? A figure danced between trees, revealing just enough to invigorate dread, like the quiet before a storm. They stumbled across a clearing, where the moonlight revealed an ancient altar, overgrown but still hauntingly beautiful. Atop it lay another white flower, tainted with crimson around the edges. As they approached, an echo of the woman's voice returned, hauntingly familiar. "You came to me." Before they could process what they had found, a swirling mist enveloped the clearing, hovering thick around them. Heart pounding, Lydia reached for her friends, but they stumbled back, fear stark across their faces. Suddenly, the flower disintegrated into shadows, swirling around them, drawn to the very core of their beings. With strange resonance, their minds filled with whispers, tales untold, promises of revelation and terror entwined. What was meant to be a mere investigation spiraled into a storm of destiny, weaving their fates tighter. One truth loomed large: something was watching, and they were not alone, and now the night was just beginning. Who would discover the power buried in this ancient curse? Who among them would pay the ultimate price? The mist curled around them, a living entity that enveloped their senses. Lydia could barely breathe, the thick air pressing down on her like a weight. Shadows danced just beyond her vision, flaring in and out of sight. She reached for James, her fingers trembling as they brushed against his arm. He felt solid, real, but the fear in his eyes mirrored her own. "Do you hear that?" he whispered, voice strained. The whispers had turned into a chorus of unsettling murmurs, all blending together in a cacophony that made her skin crawl. "Yes," Lydia said, though it was more instinct than acknowledgement. The sounds were horrid, filled with agony, breaking into her consciousness. It felt as if the very woods were alive, breathing, and watching them with malevolent intent. Marina stumbled back, clutching at her head. "No! Get out! We shouldn't be here." Panic marred her features, her eyes darting wildly around. "Don't let it get to you," James urged, though his tone faltered. "We can't lose each other in this." A sudden crack of a branch echoed through the clearing, slicing through their frantic chatter. They froze, hearts pounding. Something was close, lurking just out of sight, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. "Maybe we should," Lydia started, but the mist thickened, coiling tighter. It was as if the universe had conspired to close off their escape. She felt it creeping up her legs, inky tendrils reaching for her very soul. "Run!" James shouted, breaking the spell of fear, and he took off into the darkness, pulling Lydia with him. Marina followed, her shoes slipping on the wet ground as they stumbled through the unknown. The branches clawed at them, pulling at their clothes and skin. Lydia could feel every ragged breath fill her lungs, panic shredding her focus. Behind them, the whispers intensified, an echo that seemed to rise and fall like a dark wave about to crash into them. The path twisted, turning into a labyrinth that forced them deeper into the clutch of the woods. "What if we can't find our way out?" Marina panted, her voice tight with terror. "We have to keep moving." James barked, pushing forward, each word a desperate plea. The night was an abyss, swallowing their hope, but surrender was not an option. As they raced, Lydia glimpsed flashes of that haunting figure in white at the corners of her vision, darting between the trees. "She's toying with us." James glanced back, the fear in his expression igniting a primal instinct to survive. "Don't look. Just keep going." But it was too late. The once faint wailing grew deafening, a shriek infused with loss. It gnawed at their sanity, drawing tears from Marina's eyes as she tripped over roots that felt like the gnarled fingers of the cursed woods. Lydia's heart thundered in her chest as they burst into another clearing, this one bathed in a ghostly light. The air shifted, an unnatural stillness washing over them. In the middle of the clearing, a stone well stood, its edges worn and cracked with age. It beckoned them like a siren on a rocky shore. "What if it leads us out?" Marina urged, her voice barely masking her fear. "But what else could it unleash?" James replied, heart pounding. "We can't take that risk." Lydia stepped closer, an uneasy sense of purpose flooding her veins. "But we can't just stay here." The echoes became frenetic as they crept closer, the whispers clawing at their resolve. "You've come to me," the chilling voice returned, more insistent now. "What does it want?" Marina shrieked, stepping back, but it was too late. Lydia had already knelt beside the well, peering into its depths. "Do you hear it?" she murmured, entranced, oblivious to the fear radiating from her friends. "It's calling." Suddenly, a frigid wind rushed around them, snapping Lydia back to her senses. The very air vibrated, and with each heartbeat, a pulse of malevolence resonated. "Get away!" James screamed, reaching for her, but the ground trembled beneath them. The well erupted with a blast of shadows, swirling out like a tide, dragging them toward the mouth of darkness. Lydia felt the ground shift, as if the well were alive, trying to claim them all. With one final guttural cry, she grasped for the others, but they were slipping away, the shadows binding them to the ancient truth buried within the well. Fear gripped her heart with icy tendrils as she understood, something with sinister power awaited, and only the bravest or the foolish would dare confront it. With one last resounding roar, the shadows pulled her closer to the abyss. What awaited them beneath that cursed well? And would they emerge as guardians or pawns of a darkness deeper than mere nightmares? As the shadows consumed her, Lydia felt an electric rush tighten around her limbs, pulling her toward the slick, dark maw of the well. The world spun beneath her, and the ghostly light flickered, illuminating the terrified faces of her friends for a fleeting moment. "Lydia!" James's voice sliced through the chaos, raw and frantic. She could see him reaching for her, but the shadows twisted like serpents around her, binding her to the ancient stone. Panic coursed through her veins. "Don't look down. Stay with me," she shouted, each word a desperate anchor in the storm of darkness. Marina screamed, her voice breaking, echoing as if taunted by the very spirits they had inadvertently awakened. "It's pulling us in. Fight it." But the well's grip was unyielding. The whispers crescendoed, sibilant and sinister, as if the shadows were alive with every regret, every sorrow of souls lost. What they spoke, Lydia could almost understand, and it chilled her blood. Join us, Marina. Hold on to something," Lydia urged as the ground beneath her began to crack. The stones splintered like glass, sending shards flying into the air. "We need to find a way to break free," James yelled, his fingers now clutching a tangle of roots jutting from the earth, desperation fueling his every movement. "Grab my hand." But there was a pull deeper than fear, a strange compulsion that urged Lydia to lean closer, to surrender to the cold embrace of the well. She fought against it, her heart racing, her thoughts a jumble of instinct and awareness. If she surrendered now, the shadows roared, like a beast awakening from slumber, and as they tightened, she felt the coldness seep into her very soul. Bits of her consciousness began to flicker away, lost in the depths of that dark call. "I can't hold on," she cried, her voice a thin thread in the roaring madness. Suddenly, a surge of bravery coursed through her. Drawing from some primal well of strength, Lydia pushed back against the shadows. "No!" she screamed, shaking her head as if she could physically repel the darkness, and she heaved herself forward, reaching for James. Her hand found his just as the shadows released a howl of frustration, their grip faltering in an instant. A blinding light erupted from the depths of the well, washing over them like sunlight after a storm. "Now!" James shouted. "Pull!" With an extraordinary effort, Lydia and James jerked Marina back from the edge, falling onto the damp earth in a heap. They gasped, hearts racing as the shadows recoiled, drawn back into the well's depths, writhing like angry vipers denied their prey, but the moment was as precarious as it was fleeting. The ghostly light pulsed ominously, revealing the ancient well's fervor, a promise of what lay beneath. What just happened? Marina breathed, her body trembling. What was that thing? James helped Lydia to her feet, his gaze darting nervously back toward the well. "I don't know, but we can't stick around to find out." As they began to back away, the air thickened, heavy with dread. The whispers returned, now shrill and mocking, echoing still in the shadows that did not retreat entirely. "It won't let us leave that easily," Lydia murmured, heart pounding as she turned to face her friends. "Is it still here?" Before she could finish, the ground shook violently, splintering beneath them, and a ghostly figure materialized, cloaked, face obscured, with a rictus grin that promised despair. Backpedaling, they stumbled toward the edge of the clearing, but more shadows crawled forth, and running felt futile as reality twisted around them. "We have to make a choice," James shouted, panic igniting his voice. "Fight. Or run." Suddenly, like lightning crashing through the night, the air around them crackled with energy as the figure raised a skeletal finger toward them, the shrill laughter echoing from all directions. "Your souls are marked. Choose wisely." Darkness erupted again, tugging at their resolve, and Lydia felt the weight of otherworldly eyes upon them, urging them toward a dread-filled decision they were unprepared to make. What would they face next? The threshold of life or the abyss of eternal torment? They had never been this close to cruelty so profound, and yet the shadows beckoned, promising truths they never sought to discover. The ground quaked again, a violent tremor that made their legs tremble as the ghostly figure loomed larger, its dark cloak absorbing the faint light like a sponge. Lydia's heart raced, pounding against her ribs in a chaotic rhythm. Fear flooded her senses, overwhelming her with a sense of impending doom. "Run!" James shouted, breaking the trance that had gripped them. He grabbed Lydia's arm, forcing her to follow him as the shadows surged forward, a creeping tide that threatened to engulf them once more. Marina tripped over the jagged stones, her breath hitching in her throat as she struggled to keep pace. I can't," she gasped, but James's grip held firm, pulling her along as they plunged into the trees lining the clearing. Branches scratched at their skin, leaves rustling like whispers of the damned, as they pushed deeper into the darkness. The laughter of the cloaked figure echoed behind them, mingling with the sinister whispers that swirled in the shadows, each taunt more chilling than the last. "Your souls are not your own. You will never escape." The words pierced through the night air, making Lydia freeze for just a heartbeat, a moment trapped between fight and flight before survival instinct kicked in once more. "Don't stop," James insisted, never looking back. "Keep running." The forest closed in on them, shadows twisting and turning as if sentient. Lydia could feel the cold breath of the darkness, nipping at her heels like a phantom predator. She stole a glance over her shoulder, and her stomach dropped. The figure was gliding effortlessly through the trees, a whisper of fabric against bark. It had launched itself from the well's mouth, a demon unleashed, hungry, relentless. They burst into a clearing, gasping, and Lydia skidded to a halt. A tall stone archway loomed before them, an ancient relic half buried in the earth, vines creeping over it like gnarled fingers. This place felt different, heavy with forgotten memories, like a heartbeat barely audible beneath layers of dust. "What is this place?" Marina breathed, her voice quaking. I think this used to be a gateway," James replied, glancing warily at the encroaching shadows. Maybe it can help us. With a surge of adrenaline, the trio ran toward the archway, instinctively knowing that this old structure held secrets that could either doom them or offer escape. As they neared, the air thickened, pulsating with an energy that sent chills down Lydia's spine. She reached out toward the stone, her fingertips brushing against the cold surface. "No!" James shouted. "We don't know what it does." But it was too late. Upon contact, a surge of energy shot through her like lightning, illuminating her thoughts with images of ancient spirits trapped and begging for release. The moment warped time memories flickered like old film reels, blending the lives of those who had come before her, sorrow, anger, despair. A voice rose above the din, serrated and sharp, beckoning her deeper into the archway. "Join us and know your fate." Lydia staggered back, her heart racing as shadows twisted around the archway, spiraling up to its peak like smoke rising from a flame. "No! We need to go!" she cried, but a voice, clearer now, resonated within her mind, not a whisper, but a commanding shout from the depths of her fears. "You cannot run from destiny." As the shadows enveloped the archway, twisting it into a phantasmagoric tableau of dread, Lydia felt the weight of it pressing down on her chest. Time seemed to shatter, laying her soul bare before the pulsating heart of the supernatural. Could they choose to go through, and perhaps seek salvation, or would that lead them to an even darker fate? The choice hung before them, heavy and thick as the shadows closed in. One path led to the unknown, a leap into the darkness, the other back to the clutches of the figure that sought to claim them. "What do we do?" Marina asked, her voice trembling with the weight of their options. Lydia met James's gaze, her breath hitching. "We need to decide now." And as the laughter of the figure echoed ever closer, they faced the most chilling question yet: would they trust in the archway, or was it simply another deception in a nightmare from which they might never awaken? The shadows surged, crawling forward like a living tide. Lydia felt the darkness wrap around her, heavy and suffocating. A wild idea struck her: what if the archway was indeed a way out? Hope flickered like a candle in her mind, battling the shadows that seemed to whisper against her skin. "James, Marina!" she shouted over the pounding of her heart. "What if it's our only chance?" Marina's eyes widened, darting from Lydia to the advancing figure, then back to the archway. "But what if it traps us? What if it doesn't lead anywhere? Does staying here look like a good option?" James snapped, his voice laced with desperation. "We'll die if we don't make a choice. There's no time." Lydia gripped the stone, feeling the energy swirl like a cyclone within her. "If it's a gateway, if it connects to something outside this nightmare, we might find help. Or answers." She could feel her courage slipping through her fingers, but sheer determination pulled her back into focus. "But we have to go together." The laughter from the cloaked figure morphed into something sinister, echoing their uncertainty. "You can't escape. You're mine." It taunted, each syllable striking with the weight of 1,000 nightmares. James took a deep breath, his face a mask of resolve. "Then let us do this," he said, determination breaking through the panic. He stepped forward and grasped Lydia's hand, pulling Marina along. The archway's energy pulsed, calling to them, beckoning them to step into the unknown. Together, they plunged into the archway, a rush of energy engulfed them, and Lydia felt herself drawn deeper, beyond the physical realm. It was an explosion of colors and sounds, a vortex of reality tumbling into chaos. The world shifted, and she gasped as the scenery around them transformed. Instead of the forest, they found themselves in a dimly lit hall, its walls lined with portraits of people in horrific agony. The air was stale, thick with the scent of decay and something else: fear. Lydia shivered involuntarily, a sharp chill running down her spine. "Where are we?" Marina whispered, her voice echoing ominously off the stone walls. James scanned the hall, his brows knitted in confusion. "It feels wrong. Like we've entered a nightmare." Suddenly, the portraits began to shift. Faces twisted in pain and agony seemed to come alive, their mouths opening and closing silently as if screaming without sound. The hallway echoed their silent cries, a mournful symphony that tugged at Lydia's very core. "Look!" James shouted, pointing to the far end of the hall where a faint light flickered. "That must be a way out." They dashed forward, the abyss behind them chasing them with malicious intent. The laughter morphed into anguished wails, a cacophony of lost spirits warning them of their impending doom. "Faster!" Lydia urged, her heart racing. "We can't let it catch us." But as they neared the light, an ominous shadow crept into their path, blocking their escape. It was the figure, more menacing than before, its eyes glinting like blades glimmering in the dark. The laughter echoed again, but this time it was accompanied by whispers, words wrapped in malice and the sorrow of the damned. "Did you really think you could escape? This is my domain. You are bound to me now." Fear gripped Lydia's throat, choking off her ability to scream. "What do we do now?" she panted. In that moment of desperation, she felt an unfamiliar power stirring inside her, a spark of the energy that had coursed through the archway. She glanced at James and Marina, drawing strength from their presence. "We must confront it. We don't have to be victims." As they gathered their remaining will, Lydia stepped forward, feeling the energy pulse through her fingertips. Each beat throbbed with determination, a reminder that they were not mere players in this dark game. They had the choice to fight back, to take control of their fate, but as she braced herself to unleash that energy, she felt a cold grip on her wrist. The figure's fingers coiled tightly around her, dragging her down into the depths of despair. "Your fate is sealed. You cannot escape me," but Lydia's defiance swelled. "Watch us." And with a mighty surge of courage, they all reached into the energy that pulsed around them, ready to combat the darkness. Just as Lydia felt it slipping from her grasp, she knew that all of their hopes hung on this moment. Would they confront their fear, or would they falter and fall deeper into an abyss from which there was no return? The shadows bristled, waiting to see what fate awaited them. Was this the beginning of their end or the path to liberation? The answer hung heavy in the air, pregnant with suspense. The light flickered like a solitary star in an infinite night, a beacon of hope against the overwhelming darkness. Lydia fought against the grip of the cloaked figure, straining to channel the energy that swirled around her, feeling it pulse in time with her racing heart. Her friends stood beside her, a trio against an ancient evil, refusing to be mere shadows in this cursed tapestry. "Together!" James shouted, stepping closer to Lydia, his voice fierce with resolve. Marina mirrored their determination, gripping Lydia's other hand tightly. In that instant, a wave of warmth flooded through them, igniting a flicker of power within the depths of their souls. They synchronized their breaths, drawing strength from one another as they faced the sinister figure. It twisted its mouth into a smirk, the shadows writhing like living creatures around them. "What courage," it mocked. "But you're still trapped in my web. Your fears will consume you. Not today." Lydia snapped, her voice strong despite the trembling chill in her heart. She closed her eyes, focusing on the energy they had discovered within the archway. A glowing tendril of light began to form in her grasp, sparking with vibrant colors, pushing back against the swallowing dark. James and Marina felt it too. Their combined will forged a bond, feeding her power and illuminating the corridor. The portraits lining the walls seemed to shimmer, their silent screams transformed into whispered encouragement, urging for liberation. "Now!" Lydia cried out, and with all her might, she thrust her hand forward. A radiant burst erupted from her fingertips, a blinding golden light piercing through the shadowy figure that had ensnared them. The figure recoiled, its laughter twisting into howls of agony. "What is this?" it hissed, fear creeping into its voice. "You're not supposed to fight back. You're mine." The light surged, breaking through the suffocating darkness, illuminating not only the hall but exposing the nightmare that had cloaked their minds. Fragments of their past fears erupted around them, Lydia's insecurities, James's doubts, Marina's silent battles, each illuminated by the golden glow, rendering them powerless against the combined light. "Face your fears," Marina shouted. "They can't hold us if we don't let them." With renewed fervor, Lydia, James, and Marina let the light envelop them. Their fears began to dissolve, vaporizing like mist in the morning sun. The loud howls filled the hall, echoing as they pushed harder against the figure. For every ounce of darkness summoned, they responded with 3 times the light, but just as they felt the tide turning, the walls trembled ominously. The shadows, enraged by their defiance, swirled violently. The portraits' faces transformed, screaming in panic as chaos erupted. The light flickering around them began to dim, their sanctuary shattering as the ground shook beneath their feet. Was this victory, or just another trap? Panic swelled. "Lydia!" James yelled, his voice swallowed in the growing tumult. "What do we do?" "We hold on," she cried back, fighting against the pull of despair as it clawed at her heart, desperate to drag her down. In that deafening moment, Lydia noticed something strange. The archway they had passed through flickered in and out of view behind them. Its energy beckoned, almost calling them back. Was it a route to safety or another deception? "Back to the archway," she commanded. It was a gamble, but staying here felt like certain loss. They had to run, break free from the figure's grasp and choose what they believed meant hope. As they turned and sprinted, the shadows raged around them, a cacophony of discontent following in hot pursuit. Their hearts thundered in sync, pounding against the roar of revenge that echoed in the hall. "Move," Lydia urged, pushing through the haze of fear. But with each frantic step, the shadows stretched, clawing at their heels, desperate to reclaim what was theirs. Would they reach the archway? Or would they succumb to the darkness that hungered for their souls? The final seconds ticked away like a countdown. Heavy with suspense, as the hall shook violently. The way behind them loomed larger, but something hid within its shimmering energy, a darkness that promised more than escape. What awaited them beyond the archway? Would they find sanctuary or a new horror ready to ensnare them in an eternal dance of fear? The weight of uncertainty clung to them as they raced forward, hearts in their throats. Just as they reached the archway once more, time seemed to freeze. Was this truly the end of their fight or just the beginning of something much darker? As Lydia bolted through the archway, the sensation was akin to crashing through a glass wall. A rush of cold air slapped against her skin, and she stumbled into a new realm, a dim, echoing chamber flooded with a silvery mist that swallowed the light whole. Behind her, the howls of the shadowy figure faded to whispers, but their chilling laughter lingered, a reminder of what they had left behind. "Where are we?" Marina gasped, scanning their surroundings, eyes wide with terror. The mist swirled like a living entity, coiling around their ankles, drawing them deeper into the unfamiliar space. I'm not sure," Lydia stammered. She felt a knot tighten in her stomach. They had escaped one nightmare only to plunge into another, and the eerie silence throbbed like a heartbeat, unsettling and ominous. James stepped forward, bold yet cautious. "If we're here, it has to mean something. We faced it back there. We can beat it again." "Yeah, but what if this place is worse?" Marina whispered, her voice trembling. Shadows twisted and flickered around them, not as menacing as the figure before, but ominous enough to make the hairs on the back of Lydia's neck stand on end. "Stay close," Lydia urged, reaching for her friends. The fear they had banished earlier gnawed at her again, echoing through the vast, shadowy expanse. If they had merely exchanged one form of darkness for another, what then? Suddenly, a shimmering figure emerged from the mist, dressed in what appeared to be ancient garb. Its translucent shape pulsed with a ghostly light, flickering like the stars when clouds obscure the night. "Travelers," it spoke, voice an echoing whisper that reverberated through the chamber. "You have crossed thresholds meant for the lost. This is the Shrine of Echoes, where shadows of the past reveal the truth." "What do you mean, for the lost?" Lydia asked, her voice steady despite the unease. "Here lies what you fear most, the choices not taken, the figure replied, extending an arm that sent ripples through the mist. Gaze upon the echoes of the lives you forsook. As if triggered by its words, shadows began to detach from the walls, revealing scenes from their past, like broken mirrors reflecting who they once were. Each fragment flickered, rushing past them hints of doubt, moments of oppression, and whispers of lost opportunities. Lydia gasped as she watched herself, a timid child hiding behind her mother during her first school play. She had wanted to join, to shine, but fear had held her back. "No!" she shouted, backing away. "That's not me anymore." But the shadowy figures persisted, pulling her down memory's treacherous path. Each revelation compounded its intensity. She saw James, eyes downcast, standing alone at lunch, friends laughing just out of reach. Marina, grappling with her advocacy against bullying but silent when it mattered most. "Your fears are intertwined with your very souls," the figure intoned, disturbingly calm. "Only by confronting them can you reclaim your power." "Shut up!" James yelled, fists clenched. "We've faced this. We're not afraid anymore." The air thickened, the pressure mounting. The echoes shifted, transforming into a cacophony of taunts and insults, a tidal wave of despair crashing over them like a relentless storm. "Face the truth," they chanted, their voices intertwining, wrapping around Lydia, James, and Marina with cold fingers that pinched at their hearts. Lydia squeezed her eyes shut, her breath coming in quick bursts. "We have to remember who we are, what we choose to become." For a fleeting second, the relentless noise dulled. She grasped Marina's hand tightly, then James's, feeling the warmth, the friendship that fought against the ghosts clawing at her mind. "Let us choose again," Lydia shouted into the howling abyss, her voice cutting through the echoes like a scorching flame against the chill. But an ominous shadow loomed closer, more menacing than before, inching toward them, threatening to envelope the glimmer of their light. Just as they stood together, fists raised, shadows forming an army against them, Lydia noticed an inscription on the wall behind the shimmering figure, a set of cryptic symbols that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. "Wait!" she shouted, heart racing. "What does that mean?" The reality warped, whispers sharpening into shrieks, drowning out hope. Trepidation gripped her throat. Was their fight about to take a turn for the worse? Or would they find an answer that could turn the tide in their favor? The walls echoed their fate as the silence screamed for resolution. What secrets lay hidden in those symbols, and would they spell salvation or doom for the trio now ensnared in a deadly dance of shadows? A deep chill settled in the shrine of echoes, shadows creeping closer as the shimmering figure loomed nearby, its translucent form flickering with urgency. Lydia glanced at her friends, their eyes wide with fear, but also with a spark of courage that mirrored her own. They were not just lost souls, they were a trio fighting back, unwilling to succumb to the darkness that sought to claim them. "Let us confront this," Lydia declared, feeling the power of unity thrumming in her heart. "Those echoes don't define us. We can choose to remember who we are." With a determined breath, she pulled James and Marina closer, their hands clasped tightly together. The shadows pulsed in reply, as if sensing the growing strength of their collective resolve. The wall behind them glimmered, the cryptic symbols begging for understanding, an oblique promise of hope. "Whatever those are, they might hold the key," James shouted over the cacophony of mocking whispers swirling around them. "Focus, you two," Lydia urged, locking eyes with each of her friends. "Channel everything we've learned. This place feeds on our fears. If we stand together, we can break its grip." In unison, they began to chant the words of affirmation they quietly repeated to themselves over the years. "We are brave. We are enough. We are free." With each repetition, the very air vibrated with their truth, pushing against the shadows crowding around them. The echoes shrieked in protest, but their voices trembled, wavering against the wave of loyalty cast by the three steadfast friends. The figure watched, its expression shifting from cruel amusement to bubbling rage, feeding on each pulse of fear that coursed through the shrine. "Enough!" Lydia cried, drawing upon something deep within her. Instantly, luminosity streamed from their joined hands, rippling outward in tendrils of light that pushed against the oppressive darkness. The shimmering figure recoiled, shadows peeling back, revealing the inscription etched upon the wall in stark relief. "Strength in unity," Marina whispered, eyes wide in realization. "When we stand together, that's our power." The room shivered with the truth of those words as images danced along the stone walls, scenes of friendship, laughter, moments of triumph. They were not victims, they were warriors. In that moment, with a rustle like thunder, the air parted, revealing a path lined with light. The echoes creaked and faded, transforming from an angry horde to a chorus of hesitant support. "Follow it!" James shouted, his courage reigniting. Together, the trio sprinted towards the glowing path, each heartbeat thumping resolutely in unison. As they advanced, the shadows fought back, but their light began to envelop the darkness, pushing against it like a tide washing ashore. "You cannot leave!" The figure roared, but Lydia refused to look back. "We've already chosen!" She shouted back defiantly, feeling empowerment surge through her veins like fire. They reached the heart of the path, the symbols glowing brighter, their meanings illuminating Lydia's understanding of strength and love. Suddenly, pressure swelled and ruptured around them, and with one final cry, they launched forward together, bursting into a blinding light. A breathtaking wind swept through, lifting them from the morass of shadows and depositing them, disoriented yet alive, on the forest floor where it had all begun. They lay sprawled on the cool grass under a sky painted in dawn hues. The woods around them felt reborn, dewy and vibrant, the curse that had choked them dissipating like morning mist. Lydia glanced at James and Marina. They were safe. Did we do it?" Marina breathed, tears glistening in her eyes. "Yes," James exclaimed, jumping to his feet, joy radiating from him. "We faced it. Together." Lydia felt a swell of laughter build within her. They had conquered not only the shadows but also the doubts that had plagued them. "We're free." She laughed, surrounded by the familiar sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves. The cursed tree stood quietly in the distance, no longer looming with intent, but simply a tree, a relic of a story finally laid to rest. "We should head home," Lydia suggested, still marveling over the release that enveloped them. Yet, as they turned to leave, a single white flower lay at their feet, glistening in the morning sun. "Another warning?" James questioned, humor lacing his voice. But Lydia shook her head, a smile playing on her lips. "No, this time, it's just a reminder of where we've been and how far we've come. We defeated the darkness, together." With the weight of fear lifted and unity threading through their hearts, they took their first steps back toward the light, a testament that together, they could face any dark foretold. As they emerged from the shadows of the woods into the vibrant embrace of the sunrise, Lydia felt peace settle deep within her. Fear had tried to ensnare them, but they had chosen to transcend together. And so they walked home, towards a future rewritten, always standing by each other in the face of the unknown. Now that the story has come to a triumphant close, don't just stand there, subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. You need to stay connected. Smash that like button now, it fuels the algorithm and shows your support. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to see this conclusion. Only true fans know how vital their support is.